Welcome, everybody. It's time for our Gemini 2026 Astro Round Table to get a look at what this sign's archetype has in store for us. First thing I like to talk about is the element associated with the sign. And when we are talking about Gemini, we're talking about the mind and intellect realm. We're talking about thoughts and ideas, communication and communion, socializing, and the design and order, that which is architected, so to speak, is part of that mental realm also. And think about the whole realm of archetypes, the designs and orders of the mental constructs. All of these things are related to the air, communicating those things, movement around, etc. So Gemini is part and parcel to all of that air stuff, very quintessentially. In fact, I think about Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer, the first four signs, being very indicative of those raw kind of elemental natures in and of themselves. The modality that we associate with Gemini is that it is mutable. It is the end of spring, right there while we're finishing up spring, right before we start summer. It is, since it's at the end of a season, it's considered changing, variable, adaptive, flexible. Things are coming and going, turning in and out, getting ready for the new stuff. And that's what makes a mutable sign mutable. It is considered two-bodied because it is, in this case, it's about the two worlds. Gemini even has that symbol that is kind of the letter or the Roman numeral two, signifying all dualities. Gemini is the most bi-curious, you could say, of all of the signs in the sense of being related to this and that, back and forth, all the twos that we can think of. Mutable signs also have the association of learning, since they are changing and adaptable. We're thinking about what we are learning in the signs that are mutable, and Gemini has definitely got a lot of themes related to that aspect. Speaking of that Roman numeral two, that is the symbol that we see as the main glyph of Gemini. You can think about it, it's the two pillars of the capital letter I side by side. So it's I and I on the Roman numeral two. It's all duos of duality. There is the quality of Gemini that is exploring the process of dissection and analyzing by cutting everything in half and learning about the this and the that, the inner and outer nature, the good and the bad. All the paradoxes of duality and polarity play in with this sign. The characters that are symbolic for Gemini are the twins. That is the uh, constellation that we think of in the sky that's related to this. And the myth of those two, gosh, I'm going to get this, I feel like wrong on the spot, but Castor and Pollux or something like that. That's the name of the twins. In mythology, they represent those qualities by virtue of being related to the mortal twin and the immortal twin. So, this world of the mundane and dying and the world of the divine and eternal. So the very human realm, the very divine realm. That which is good, that which is bad, that which is light, that which is dark. You can think about, the good twin and the bad twin, so to speak. But it's much more complex than that. I don't really see a good and a bad in any of the dualistic duels that the nature kind of talks about. But these twins represent all of those ideas where we can split things in half or see two sides of a coin. That is Gemini's purpose, is to kind of look at both sides of everything. The planets that are particularly prominent for this sign, Mercury is the ruler. Mercury, quite ambidextrous in a sense, both-handed. Has a knack for this sign, and they go together like peas and carrots. Mercury is about communication, the intellect, learning, movement. All of these things are very Gemini. Since Mercury rules it, the planet that rules the opposite sign, Sagittarius, is Jupiter, and it finds itself to be in detriment in this particular land. Since Jupiter has this quality of expansion and, kind of making the space bigger, this land of Gemini that is focused on the this and the that and the movement around, it can get a little obtuse when Jupiter is involved. It's a little bit not as doesn't have as much fine-tuned finesse moving around there, and it just can bite off a little bit more than it can fully chew the big picture of you can think of in a certain respect. Exalted and fall. I had to do a little research with this because in my mind it's like there's not a planet that really is exalted or falls in this sense. And so what I found is that the north node is exalted here, while then the opposite south node is said to fall here. And when I kind of try that on mentally to think about those for a second, the north node being exalted in Gemini definitely goes into a sense of the hierarchical rulership being Earth. Since the North Node is about our destiny and the aim of things, there is something about Gemini, its nature that increases variety. And so it also is increasing movement and articulation and learning and thinking about how that North Node functions there. It's becoming more articulate, it's becoming more expressive for enhancing the variety of life. Whereas the South Node, if the South Node is there, it's kind of got a little bit of know-it-all syndrome. And the North Node being opposite in Sagittarius land would be more, maybe more prone to um, the self-righteousness that we see with Sagittarian themes of like, I know the truth, and I've already seen all the different sides of things. So I would say to think about these two nodes being exalted and fall there with a grain of salt, but that is classically what has been pronounced anyway for the exalted and the fall nature there. Esoteric ruler is Venus. And there's something to be said about the beauty here on that soul level that Venus is about harmonizing pleasantness, um, the attraction of things that takes this dual nature and it kind of sews opposites together. So while Mercury is learning how to navigate and toggle, very much like the chariot card of tarot, back and forth between this and that to get around and move and zip zap from here to there, Venus makes all of the connections. It takes all of these opposites and finds their unifying factor, and so that's one way that the esoteric level, which is related to soul development, expresses Venus as its esoteric ruler, because it's the beauty and the attraction of how the opposites fit together in those beautiful paradoxes. And so she brings that in. I also have to say something about the fact with Mercury and Venus there, or just the virtue of Venus being in Mercury sign Gemini, we have the idea of the hermaphrodite. Hermes, Aphrodite, hermaphrodite. And so again, it's expressing that unification of opposites in a blended harmonic. The hierarchical ruler, then, when we get into the high spiritual divine order, is Earth, a planet that is often left out when we consider the various planets, but Earth is always 180 degrees away from the sun. And so there is a feature to the Earth in Gemini that is again about the Dharma and the work that we're expressing on this physical plane. And when it is in Gemini, that work is related to, again, making more diversity. The kingdom of Earth having a variety of diversity, multiplicity. It's all about that nature of many, many different life forms, many different paths, many different cultures. So just having, instead of it all being just like one thing, one flat flavor, which would be, horrible for Gemini. It loves the buffet of life. Earth, the spiritual dharma of Earth is to be this kind of physical manifestation land where there are so many different differences that we can play with, so many different languages, so many different beliefs and ideas and opinions and thoughts. And the more that we explore and put things together, ultimately it's about increasing that manifestation of diversity and multiplicity. And that's what that earth nature represents in a nutshell there from a hierarchical position. Gemini is the third sign, and so it's going to have a parallel with our third house. The third house of the zodiac, or in a chart, you can think of as being the department of Gemini stuff, the Gemini stuff of our life. Everybody has all 12 houses, has something going on there. And the third house is where we talk about what your mind has going on. What do you think about? What are you learning? What are you navigating and moving around and getting better at communicating? It's also related to our siblings. It doesn't matter if they're twins or not, but if you have siblings, brothers and sisters, the third house will give us some idea about how we move between them. Siblings are often that testing ground, the early people in our life that are our age that we can um, communicate with, that share our mind, toggle ideas back and forth, play devil's advocate. They're like this, so what if I try the opposite? Seeing what we are and what we aren't. All of that playful banter that is I think about how siblings will often push the envelope with one another, be a testing ground for one another. It's very much got that Gemini feature of the trickster embedded in it. I think about, kids playing the games like, stop copying me, all the little things that we get into with those characters. It can also be our auxiliary family members, such as uncles and aunts. And sometimes, depending on age ranges, they can be like siblings for us. It would also be things like cousins. So it says auxiliary family members. It's not the mom and the dad, but the rest of the neighborhood, if you will, of our family. And it is also indicative of our direct neighbors and neighborhood, those people to the left and the right of us, those people on both sides or either side of our home, of our house, of our set point. Um, so it gives us that navigation around the neighborhood. And that it is communication. The third house is also going to be indicative of messages coming our way, whether we're sending or receiving them. All features of language, how we communicate, what we communicate, the languages we use to communicate, and our chariots, our vessels, our vehicles for getting around. It's also thinking about the neighborhood, trips around the neighborhood. This third house represents local travel, travel that we could do on a regular daily basis. It's the grocery store, it's um, all the places that you go, the doctor's office, the places around the town that we frequent. We can file them to the specific places and other archetypes according to their theme, but just the places in your neighborhood that are local travel that you can get to in a day. I like to think about when we talk about Sagittarius, the opposite with foreign travel is somewhere you couldn't walk home from. Gemini is very much somewhere that you could walk home from. In fact, you probably know two or three ways to get there. It's not like you got to get on a train or a plane to get there. You can get there by bike, you can get there by car, and there's more than one road to travel to get there. So that's a way to think about the local travel aspect of Gemini. Thoughts, ideas, and opinions, those are all things that are housed in the mind. It's an easy house to consider those things, what we tend to think about, our way of thinking, our range of thinking, all of those things are wrapped up in the third house. That which we want to analyze and know more about, the things that we want to kind of be a know-it-all or a jack of all trades with regard to. It's also going to tune into jobs that file into these categories, which would be the writers of all different sorts. Teachers, and we think about teachers in the sense of like the ABCs, the foundations, the one, two, threes of like getting the basics is very Gemini. You get into higher education, philosophical, extension, expansion, all of those things you're going again opposite to Sagittarius. Commuting, getting around, taxi drivers, all sorts of drivers, any kind of job that's related to commuting or moving around. And it is working with the hands or the mouth. The hands are very Gemini features, as is language and the mouth. When we talked about Taurus, we also talked about the hands. There is like a brick and mortar aspects of hands-on, sensual, kind of like immersion with the hands. This is more of a versatility with the hands, movement with the hands, changing things up with the hands. Um, we can think about things like as being an aesthetic, what am I trying? Like someone who cuts hair, hairdresser, aesthetics, that kind of stuff. That has some Libra to it, but the idea of working with the hands and moving things, changing things with the hands, the versatility of the hands is very Gemini. Taurus is more of like the saturation with the hands, the deep immersion with the hands. And it's not really too accidental and far-fetched to see how they relate since they're next door to each other. And it's a fine line that's really not a line at all invisibly there that separates signs anyway. So there's a blending and blurring of the hands that moves into, again, with Gemini, after we've had a hands-on experience, we can also talk about it. We can navigate it with our mouth and that aspect to share. So third house territory, Gemini, Gemini, Gemini. To kind of wrap that up with some keyword soup and reiterate a bit of it. The list that we're saying here are all of the words that would be filed in the Gemini filing cabinet. Again, variety. It's all about the this and that, the diversity, the buffet, a lot of different options. Gemini does not want to do the same thing over and over. It wants to go to different places. It wants to turn things over and look at them from different angles. All of the multiplicity is wrapped up in Gemini. Duality and polarity, very close, but they're essentially both Gemini, looking at the two-sided nature of things. And then the polarity is looking, more we get into duality is, I guess we could split hairs on the difference between the two, but we've just got the separation of two things, left and right. And then sometimes with polarity, I think about how they're a little bit more unified, like the north and the south pole of a magnet being opposite but equal. In most of these cases, there is an equilibrium between them, which is what Venus helps to shine forth when she's playing in this realm. But it could be just any two opinions. One person thinks this way and another person thinks that way. And they may not seem connected at first. And so there can be a duel or a hashing out or, that ensues between them. The polarity kind of helps to see how they morph and change between one another on a spectrum. But both of these two-sided natures are part of that. Knowledge, anything that we're talking about with I want to know. In fact, the key word or key phrase to know is part of Gemini. It wants to be the know it all. So all forms of knowledge are Gemini. Communication, getting it across, whether we're writing it, whether we're speaking it, whether we're acting it out. Sign language, very Gemini. We're using the hands to communicate. Can't get any more Gemini than that. So ASL definitely files here too. All forms of language. Think about the multiplicity of language. If we get a little weird and wacky, we're thinking about how Uranus has just gone into Gemini recently. Another language that is just coming online, we might say, could be telepathy. And telepathy, could be a language that is Gemini also. But any kind of language. Astrology is a language. So just learning anything that's got an ABC's kind of format to how we get a message across is very Gemini. Writing, again, that's part and parcel with communication language. The local environment we've talked about, places that you could walk home from, places that you frequent on a daily basis that are familiar, multiple paths and ways to navigate to get to the same place. The GPS of your car and navigation, how you get around, how you know your way around, how we interpret the signs on the road, the symbols, all the symbols. We don't think about that as much as language, but it is. So, like, whether it's a hieroglyph or our modern day emojis, those are all tools that help us to navigate the nuances of communication. Gemini, thoughts and ideas, anything that is coming through your brain, out your mouth, all of those things that we're thinking about, whether it is a fact that something we know or an opinion, something that we just, it's where we are on something. It's where our dualistic position has decided to play. And opinions, you can joke, opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one. Gemini's got a lot of them, and they might change depending on who the audience is in that playful trickster kind of way. Gemini is notorious for being able to take both either side of an argument and come up with thoughts and opinions to support it, and then just as quickly swap it over to the other side and do the same thing from there. Analysis is Gemini, and analysis is how we come to know things by dissecting. And I've got a couple spelling errors there. Please forgive me. I guess, moving a little fast with my own fingers and communicating. It's not dissect, it's dissect. Um, Cutting things in half, cutting things in two, anything that involves cutting things and looking at them from within. There's a sharp quality to the mind in this regard of analyzing and separating and severing things in half. We also can see some of that severing idea with Mars, and when Mars is in Gemini, you've got quite a sharpness to it that kind of heats up the blade a little bit further. The core idea in Gemini's keyword soup I tried to articulate is this feature of inquisition, seeking to know more from all angles so as to better communicate its variety of factors with analytical articulation. Tried to employ a lot of those keywords and ideas together there. But Gemini wants to know. It's going to ask questions. It wants to see from both sides and from every position around the table. It wants to sit in every seat and look from both sides of an equation there so that it can communicate to a fuller extent. It knows all the languages. It knows how to say anything, any way, from any position. And it has already looked at it well enough that it can spit it back out and express it with a quickness. There is a quick quality to Gemini. It moves fast. It flits around, so to speak. When I think about the orientations in time for this sign, I kind of pegged it with the present being its number one. And that was the idea of toggling present options to keep learning moving. It wants to go back and forth to see what it can know, what is there to know. As far as the second aspect, dissecting past ideas in order to contrast differences, it's looking back just to see what has it done before and to see what is different about now. It's going to measure and cut and analyze between the present and the past, seeing what it did, so it could probably change it and do it different the next time. It's not going to want to do the same thing. If I went to this restaurant yesterday, I'm going to go to somewhere totally different today, somewhere new. And so in that present moment, it can have a little um, not the analysis paralysis that we sometimes think about Libra from wanting to please everybody, but the sense of like being very gung ho to do this, and then it might change its mind and want to do that. And so it may not stick with a choice. It's great. It can make a choice, it gets excited about choices, but it usually gives itself wiggle room so that whatever choice it's made, it can then change its mind. Again, it's a mutable sign, so Gemini loves to change its mind. It might decide one thing today and it's going to decide something else out tomorrow. And then in the same way that it looks back to dissect the past in order to decide how to do things differently later, it's also for the future, it's scouting out new ways to go about future destinations. If it's going to go somewhere that it has been before, it's probably going to try to go there a different way. So it's looking for different ways to do things. It's always trying to switch it up. It's always trying to navigate towards new possibilities. It's not something that wants to stay slow and steady in the same place like its predecessor, Taurus, which is like once it knows something and likes something, it just wants to keep doing that. Gemini is breaking from that mold and wants to explore new frontiers. It wants to go somewhere different, especially when there's a direct contrast that's opposite of what it was before. Speaking of opposites, I've mentioned a little bit about how it is the sign that is opposite Sagittarius. And let's take a look at that. Gemini is that mutable air sign. And so, again, those keywords of analysis, separation, contrast. It's also the nearby local environment. It's that which is immediate, fast, at hand, and then writing. And its impetus is to dissect what's at hand, to see it from both sides and all angles separately. It wants to play with the left side of an equation and then play with the right side of the equation. So again, all of the opposites getting a turn to toggle back and forth. Sagittarius is opposite. They are both on an axis of learning. They are both mutable, changing signs, and they're both yang active. But see if you can taste the flavor of what's different here, because Sagittarius is mutable fire. And so if Gemini is about analysis, cutting things in half to see both sides, Sagittarius is about synthesis. It's about putting opposites or things together into bigger wholes. So every time there is some sort of two, Sagittarius is sewing them up into a bigger one. It's looking to synthesize information into a grand idea, a big picture. The fact that Gemini is separation, Sagittarius is about that which is holistic, the whole picture, the whole process, the whole belief. That can have different opinions within that belief, but it kind of wants to add it up to one big philosophy, one big picture. Gemini focuses on the contrast. Sagittarius has more of the comparative. It's comparing and then looking at how they are part of one. How they add up together. Gemini is the nearby and local, that which we could walk home from. Sagittarius is far out, foreign places that you are unfamiliar with, that you have to travel a long way to get, and they're long range. It's not immediate. It's not that which I can get to in a day or go to on a daily basis. It's a long range. It's a planned out trip. It's somewhere far away. If Gemini is writing the book, getting all the ideas out there and articulated, Sagittarius is what publishes. Sagittarius is the idea of to broadcast something. It's a broad scope, the big picture. So when you broadcast something, you're getting the message out to a lot of people. You're like standing on the stage and delivering to a large audience, versus Gemini, which is just about passing the message back and forth, passing the note to this person, and it's kind of like blowing dandelion seeds in the wind and dispersing them. So there's a dispersal quality to Gemini that's like almost like playing telephone. Like this person says it, and this person, and word gets around the town. So Gemini, the publishing and broadcasting and that aspect of Sagittarius is more about kind of like telling everybody all at once. It's a broadcast message where it doesn't take time to telephone its way around a navigated network. It is directly disseminated to everybody all at once. It's published in that way. Published has that also the quality public, making it public in a big, broad way. The impetus of Sagittarius is to scout out and understand larger frameworks by putting existent fragments together into one cohesive whole. So it wants to know the big picture. Gemini wants to know all the little details. It wants to know all the different sides and angles. Sagittarius wants to know how all of those things connect. What is the big picture to something? Gemini wants to know what all 50 states are. Sagittarius wants to get a feel for what the country is about. This would be another way to think about it. Cohesion, coagulation. These are Sagittarian things, where Gemini is more likely to split things off, to split hairs. Again, when you're splitting hairs, you're finding those small differences and kind of playing devil's advocate about them. Trickster quality, Hermes, the trickster. So that's a little bit of how these opposite signs complement one another because they're both on this axis of learning, the small things and the big things. And there's processes that go back and forth between analysis and synthesis. Next relationships around the wheel we want to think about are Pisces and Taurus. That is a bit of a typo there. Let's make sure. Yeah, I got it right down below, but I'm going to edit that real fast. It's one typo I'm not specifically happy about. So Taurus and Cancer are the neighbors. Um, so we see Gemini here is wedged in between Taurus and Cancer. It just came out of that land of Taurus where everything was slow and steady and well founded. And then it's going into that land of Cancer. And let's see how it knows its neighbors here. So Taurus, where it was before, it was fixed earth. It was solid like a rock. And it was coming from Aries before, where that burst of raw desires that initiated experiences to enact its identity turn into a sense of what one has a taste for as it settles and accumulates and develops the resources to sustain that. It's about fortifying those sensual enjoyments in Taurus and really getting a saturated immersion in that physical realm. Well, Gemini breaks suit, and what we see as we go from one sign to the next in the sequence is that they're always breaking away from whatever the last one was. That's why we have a yin yang, back and forth between the signs around the wheel. So Taurus was very steady and sturdy, and Gemini says, I need to be free, I need to move around. So from securing that solid foundation of what one's acquired that definite taste for, there's a process of analytical dissection that's navigated to learn all the diverse facets. So cool. I really like basket weaving. Well, Gemini's then like, I want to know all the different techniques and all the different histories and all the different ways to do that. So it's learning as many different components about what it appreciates. It's seeking to, again, know it all in a manner that then it can talk about and express and extend its learning by moving the information around and finding new places that it can receive more input. What we find when Gemini transforms into Cancer, the next sign that we'll look at next month, Cancer is a cardinal water sign, and from navigating and analyzing a diverse variety of oppositional polarities, in order to more fully know the exact nature of something, all the stuff that Gemini has articulated and spread out and put all, diverse around the environment kind of then comes back together. It's kind of like we take all of the stuff that we've blown and it starts to, if we spread the dandelion seeds everywhere, they then get something pregnant, and then we have a fertile bubble in Cancer where it congeals into more of an encapsulated sense of oneself. So Cancer is where we take all of the stuff that we've known and experienced prior and we kind of sew it up and hold it in a womb that is secure with the effort to nurture and protect as an encasement of our sensitive soul self that provides soothing comfort, something that we can kind of baby and know and own in a different sense from Taurus. There is quite a fun sextile between Taurus and Cancer that is a good pairing. They both have that security focus, but there's a sense of the emotional feelings and the nostalgia and the comfort related to all the things that we've come to know that we really want to grow into something. We want to hold those things that we have extended and kind of plant them somewhere to root into something more in Cancer. It's worth noting that nothing is ever in common with neighboring signs. So if Gemini's mutable air, you can see Taurus is fixed earth, Cancer is cardinal water. They're not the same element, they're not the same modality. They are familiar with one another because they're buddies on both sides. It's neighbors that they know about because it's where I just came from and it's where I'm going. And so they're very different from ourselves, but there's a sequential kind of on, off, on pattern going around that keeps signs familiar with what's next door to them in that regard. The next relationships are also a bit awkward. They're the quincunxes or inconjuncts. And for Gemini, those two signs are Scorpio and Capricorn. When you have all of them working together, they complete a yod, which is a finger of God aspect between three planets. However, if you just have two, if Gemini is just playing with Scorpio or Gemini is just playing with Capricorn, it's a little bit awkward. I think about like the little foghorn, like a weird sound because they don't quite get each other. And again, they don't have anything in common. Gemini's mutable air, Scorpio's fixed water, Capricorn cardinal earth, not the same modality, not the same element. They don't understand one another. However, they're not even neighbors either. They're like all the way opposite on the table. They're not exactly opposite. The one that's exactly opposite is kind of like looking in a different mirror. And oppositions have a very polarizing effect that's quite quintessential with Gemini. That idea of like, ooh, they're so different from me, but they're directly across from me. So there's something that we're doing that relates with one another. Quincunxes don't really have anything that relates to themselves over there, so they kind of get ignored in a quincunx relationship. Gemini, since it's being focused on, would be the release point of such a feature in a yod. And so Gemini again is knowledge, variety, the communicating, movement, a quick study, the fast pace of moving about and learning things. Its idea of taking in is learning the basic languages, ABCs, one, two, threes, for navigating the contrast of diversity. So Gemini again zip zaps around so that it can know the ins and the outs of everything around itself. Cool. The other two signs can, when they're in conjunction, make a foundational sextile platform. But at first, let's just kind of think about how each one of them doesn't pair exactly that easily with Gemini. Scorpio likes to go deep. It's got that sense of like immersion. It's holding that emotional value. Gemini is like, knowledge and moving around and keeping things light and airy. Scorpio invests deeply. It wants to get invested in something. It wants to know it from the bottom. It wants to really extend downward. It also likes extremes. That we're going to go for extreme goods and extreme bads. Gemini likes a little good and a bad, but as soon as it's had a taste of one, it wants the other. Scorpio wants to go as far into that one and then as far into the other. The extreme nature has a depth and range that Gemini finds a little bit too much. It'd rather skate the surface. Gemini is a fairly superficial sign, the jack of all trades. It wants to know a little bit about all things, not a deep dive into something. Scorpio's form of taking in is merging, like joining forces with somebody else's values for an enriched situation. So it's joining very deeply and holding on for a development of investment. Gemini would find a lot of the Scorpio things to be too much. It's too bonded. It's bonded and it's locked in, and that's like wow for Gemini. It wants to get away and be able to go somewhere else and do something different. Whereas Scorpio wants to be ride or die, going all the way in with something or somebody. Capricorn, cardinal Earth. Capricorn is about the ambition of making it to the top of something. Gemini, like, might think it's fun to, get to the top of somewhere, but the hard work that it takes with the commitment and concentration, oh, that sounds like a lot of work to Gemini. Gemini just wants things that are quick, fast, and easy. I think about the tagline of a favorite restaurant in Wilmington, hot, fast, cheap, and easy. Um, Gemini likes to just skate around quickly. It wants to be able to get to somewhere in a day. If it's going to take a year, oh, that's a long commitment for Gemini to be thinking about. Capricorn also has the gravity of things, the weightiness of things, the seriousness. All of those are Capricorn qualities, very serious, very sturdy. Um, these kind of things, Gemini again wants to keep it light and airy. It wants to keep it in the, on the surface, skating around, flying around, zipping around. It's not about all of the seriousness and the heaviness that Capricorn can get weighed down by. Capricorn's idea of taking in is the discipline and hard work to endure through obstacles and achieve worthwhile goals. Capricorn wants to make it to the top. It wants to do what it takes to be the boss with the status and the acclaim. When Gemini gets to an obstacle, Gemini wants to not like toughen up through it. It wants to go around it, find a way to not deal with it, or switch it to something else that doesn't have that obstacle. That would be what Gemini wants to do. So they don't have a lot in common, do they? Um, that's why they're a quincunx. They don't get each other. However, if somebody has a Scorpio Capricorn sextile working that then has a Gemini release point, think about this irony. when there are planets or points that are prominently featured tying Scorpio and Capricorn together, talk about a power couple. These two signs are extremely committed and invested in things that are deep to climb the heights of achievement. And so there's a lot of solid qualities that give somebody access to the extreme highs and lows and deep pockets of values that run through other places of business investment with Scorpio. And it has a lot of that ambition and an endurance. It can really take a beating in a sense, and not give in. So it has that endurance that makes it tough, and solid with its concentration. When that sextile is acting as a platform for the Gemini planet, Gemini, it's like it unlocks a key to a buffet of variety that Gemini would not have access to otherwise. Gemini then has the keys to the occult basement of all the different things that it can learn, all the different hidden things, all the different occult hidden realms. And it's got the penthouse password to get to the highest mountaintop. It can explore things from a position that it otherwise would not be able to. So Capricorn gives it the boss status where it can learn and communicate and move about freely in a territory that takes a lot of work and time to get there, and somewhere that might be a little bit otherwise daunting, dark, taboo, or require, it pulls from a lot of other people's resources. Gemini then has access to all of those resources, all of those other thoughts and ideas and opinions that it might not otherwise get invited into. It might be excluded from without those merged business orientations and investments in others. So when you have both of those things working already, it's a platform that gives one's communication and movement ability a lot more freedom in places that it's not typically privy to. Without the Scorpio Capricorn energies, Gemini is just moving around on the surface, going from one thing to another. It's not going to get into those deep levels, and it's not going to get into those high levels that take hard work. And so they can act as a platform that really accelerates Gemini's ability to study quickly from positions that it otherwise would not have the freedom to explore. So there's a way that those unfamiliar territories can point the finger in a direction that Gemini really does enjoy if they're all connected. So that's how quincunxes work when they turn into yods. Some easier relationships for Gemini are Aries and Leo, some other yang signs that are two doors down. Fire and air get along pretty well. So the mutable air can speak well with the cardinal fire and the fixed fire. They're not the same modality, but because they're all yang, they're all moving, they're all active. There's a lot of connections and resources and opportunities that can get built between them. Gemini likes quick movement to learn from a variety of factors and then communicate that. And it's favorable towards inquisitive navigation. So just asking some questions and moving on and finding out a piece of information and then sharing it. So it's a give and take that moves very quickly and moves between things. It flits, and it's the air that really feeds the fire. Aries independently self-initiates actions to engage instinctual desires through personal action. So Aries just likes to do things favorable towards charging ahead into new activity. So if Aries just wants to keep active and keep doing things, Gemini can give you an idea and an opinion and keep you entertained with a buffet of options. So it can always think, well, what about this? Did you want to go there? How about we try that? It can come up with a million different places for Aries to go, for Aries to do things. So it feeds that drive to stay active with a variety of ideas and options. That's how they work together. Leo's fixed fire Leo likes to be about the creative, playful displays of entertaining enjoyment from managing fun expressions. It's favorable towards showcasing enlivening showcases of enlivening an audience with generous outpours of energetic vitality. So Leo is the entertainer. It wants to have fun. It wants to show things in a unique way. And Gemini's trickster light nature, again, it's fueling these fires with options. Gemini's ideas and opinions and jokes and what about this and that kind of gives Leo something to keep playing off of, to keep making entertainment, to keep playing. It's feeding it with new ideas or new hoops to jump through. And Leo likes to be seen in the spotlight. And so if ever Leo starts to seem boring or get bored, Gemini quickly can feed it something new, a new idea that helps it to refresh its vitality and come up with something new as far as an entertaining endeavor. So Gemini is really a fuel house for feeding the activities of these two fire signs that are two doors down, and that makes them easy allies to get along. The challengers for Gemini come through Virgo and Pisces. These are the other mutable signs, mutable earth and mutable water, that are at 90-degree angles, which mean they're all mutable. They're all changing things up. They're all focused on learning, but they all want to do it from a different angle. Gemini wants to do it from the air, all about ideas and thoughts and movement. Well, Virgo wants to do it related to practicalities, which, in that earthy realm is a little bit more binding than what that freedom of air likes. And then Pisces, mutable water, likes to change things and swim this way and that way. But it really likes to do it in an emotional regard, which is not really Gemini's thing. It's not about emotions, it's about thoughts and ideas. And all of those emotions can get a little bit too sticky. Um, so they challenge one another, they stimulate one another. Gemini is a strong drive to flexibly learn and change in accord with a vast variety of diverse information circulated and communications for greater knowledge. So it wants to change things up when it comes to information and circulating. Virgo, strong drive to flexibly learn and change in accord with the practical necessities of improvements for a system's practical efficiency of processing. It wants to change things up to make things better. Now, they stimulate one another because Gemini will come up with new ideas. Well, what about this and what about that? So when Virgo thinks that they've got their system together, Gemini's devil's advocate can make them think about something they didn't, and then they have to adjust something to make it more effective. Well, sometimes for Gemini, the practicalities of something that's not going to work in this situation can force Gemini to flip and find a new angle. So they stimulate and catalyze one another, but more from like a, oh, you're making me change than, ooh, this is fun with like the sextiles. The sextiles are like feeding one another. Virgo saying, you've got to change your idea because it's not practical. And then Gemini can make Virgo change because like you haven't thought of everything and there's this other facet you need to take into account for your perfection. So they're goading each other to change based on their elemental differences. Pisces, that strong drive to flexibly learn and change in accord with emotional experiences of nebulous loss or idealized fulfillment that compassionately meets other energies where they are. Um, Pisces is that energy that's willing to change based on the feelings and the sympathies that come through the emotional experiences with others. So there can be times that Gemini, I want to go to this place, I don't want to go to that place. And Pisces can come in and wash things out and be like, this is really what's needed in the emotional situation because of, so and so's needs or limitations. And then Gemini has to find another way to do it. Even if they'd already gone there, or they already know that, they've got to change in accord with the emotions of somebody. Then sometimes Pisces can be so emotionally consumed with the feeling of something or the fantasy about somebody or something, or the attachment to the sorrow and helping something less fortunate. And Gemini might bring in information that, like, hey, they're taking advantage of you, or hey, that's really not really so. You're kind of overly idealizing it. There's this other dimension you're not taking into account. So Gemini's mental analysis can dispel the fantasies of Pisces so that it has to make a change from something it's over idealized or a situation where it's gotten sucked into a sympathy with something that's actually not really the full picture. So the emotional glamours that Pisces can be prone to get dispelled by the mental nature of Gemini. And then sometimes the mental nature of Gemini gets reoriented because of the emotional sympathies that Pisces is magnetically receptive to that pushes a change. So again, all of these squaring off energies um, push one another to change um, in a similar way because of their modality, but they're coming at it from a different elemental place. So they challenge one another when they are making those changes. Some of the best friends for Gemini as an archetype come from the other air buddies, Aquarius and Libra. Again, air in general, all of these signs have in common that they're intellectual, they're communicative, they're social, they're circulating, they're about that which is ephemeral and passing. And they all have the hot and dry qualities. So let's start at the bottom here. Gemini, we've been talking about is social learning, that inquisitive exploration of all varieties of information for fundamentally learning all the facets to multiple topics, which are then analyzed for translation, dissemination, and communication across a flexibly navigated interchange of commerce with an assortment of diverse others. And if I haven't mentioned it already, which I think I've kind of skipped out on, sales. Gemini is all about sales, all those places where we buy and sell our goods, the commercial market, the thinking about all the levels of commercials, all the tricks that we do to change people's mind and opinions, the commerce, the wheeling and the dealing that we do, making a deal, haggling a price up and down, and the communication factor, sales and changing stuff and translating money into objects on it, objects and all of those things are part of this Gemini nature. And it's where we learn in the social environment from all of those communicative exchanges moving about. Well, it all gets started in Libra. Our social action, the drive to take action, is the initial steps of interactively interfacing with others to establish one-on-one relationships. So Libra is that department where we reach out. Oh my gosh, I like the way that looks on you. Or, oh my gosh, like you like that? That sounds like fun. Let's play together. So it's the way that we initiate relationships, and then that gives us the opportunities to compare who we are with other people that might have some differences as we find more harmonic similarities where we're very compromising, pleasantly patronizing. We're looking for that refined balance while we're being diplomatically cooperative to find harmony with other people. We want to engage in relationships, so we reach out to other people through Libra. Aquarius fixed air is social security. It's your network of friends and like-minded people that you enjoy community with. So it's structuring those group ideals for holding together a social network, a community of like-minded camaraderie in favor of collaborative elevation towards greater inclusivity. It's where you build your group, you build a network of all of these different ideas working as one whole. There's a unified group and whole quality to Aquarius that's it's got some paradoxes that are holding together a network. Well, it zip zaps around, so you can have an idea coming from here, and then an idea zipping over here, and then over here, and then over there. So the network is one total whole of everybody coming together in like-mindedness, but it has a variety of unique perspectives at that table, very much like the zodiac. So Aquarius is where we hold all of those friendships and connections together, all of those differences. We find the inclusion factor for all of those unique differences under one umbrella. And then Gemini is where we really branch out and learn again from exploring all those different positions. Instead of focusing on how they're all coming together, it's where we break and then we have, an interaction with these two and we learn and we zip zap ideas back and forth. And then we're over here in these two and these two. And so it moves the information around rather than trying to hold it all together. And it's not with Libra, which is just about the pairing in that initiation between two and really keeping that in a harmonic balance. Gemini is getting the message here and there, and then getting the message over there, and then getting the message over here. But they all are circulating ideas. They're circulating the mental energies amidst a community of communication. So all of these archetypes of air really vibe together and create quite the trine of experience. I believe that is our relationships around the round table. So we've taken a look at how Gemini plays with everybody else at the table. Let's spend a splash of time looking at this particular Gemini season of 2026. This is the feature of the round table classes I do that's specific to this year. The rest of the information is the same all the time. This bit is this year. And as our season begins, it will start on May 26th at 8:37 p.m. This one's time specific of when the sun is at 0 degrees of Gemini. That's where it enters into it. And it's going to start with quite the electric sense of novelty because Uranus just went into Gemini. And so when the sun goes into Gemini, it immediately joins Uranus. And these planets, the big theme of this year and into next year is we have a trine between Uranus and Pluto with a midpoint of Neptune. And so anytime a planet is talking to one, it's talking to the others by default. So the sun will be trine Pluto, conjunct Uranus, and sextile Neptune all at the beginning of this season. And that gives our sun a burst of novelty. Uranus is that electric vibe of the spontaneous, the unusual, a quickening. So there's a quickening of information, a quickening of diversity, a quickening of all things Gemini that starts off the bat. And it's also immersed in a sense of depth, getting into deep ideas that are new and unusual. So something about the circulation this season of Gemini is new information, deep information, and also a touch of there's an affinity for the emotional, mystical, transcendent dimensions of Neptune that are also working favorably with this. So our sun, the big spotlight in the sky as it enters into Gemini, is really when you think about going into Gemini, you're in for a burst of new things and new movement anyway. You just got out of Taurus where everything was super solid and fixed. Um, this is like a live wire. And it's coming as Mercury is still separating from Uranus. So the idea of ideas and communications getting some newness and some novelty to them, we're now starting to take these new ideas and perspectives and integrate them into our identity with the sun. Sun and Mercury are often very close together. And it's just in this time period, the sun is coming in after the mind. So our mind has been exposed to the new ideas. And now we're trying them on ourself with our self-expression with the sun at a time where Mercury is also still trine Pluto, getting immersed in that depth. And then also, I didn't write it on here, but we can also see about 8 degrees of Mercury is also getting sextile to Saturn. So there's a way that these new ideas, we're finding ways to make them more structured and solid in our life, finding ways to have them more well-founded. They're still moving around quickly and deeply, but we're also looking at how we can hold on to them more. Saturn is like the glue and the concrete factor. So we're getting that concretization in our mind as we're also maybe showcasing the show and tell. The sun is the show and the Mercury is the tell. So the show and tell of the season starting up is very much about things that are new outside the box. This whole year, between the UFO files and just all the other new outside the box things going on. Wouldn't be surprised if Gemini season specifically this year is a time period where new information starts to come out a lot faster. We're also saying that Venus newly dipped in Cancer. We got an appreciation for our home going on that is a little overly romanticized since Venus is square Neptune. This season starts out with just a really dreamy fascination with others. Um, the romantic and interpersonal dimension of life can be um, maybe a little bit overly idealized with rose-colored glasses about who other people are, finding them more attractive. The fantasy is more attractive than the reality in some way. And so this could be part of what stimulates us to be so open to new ideas and et cetera. It could be, other people and the dreamy glamours and idealizations that we have about them um, in the ways that we think that they are fulfilling our fantasies in some way. Whatever it is that kind of gives us the the glamour that Neptune brings to the table, which is especially kind of stimulated in a square. Venus is also starting the square Saturn, but that aspect of this is going to be a little bit further down the road. We also see that right here at the beginning of Gemini season, Mars is just starting its Taurus season. It's changed into Taurus. It's leaving that Chiron conjunction. So there's a way that um, something that has been frustrating us, a way that action might have been uh, to our detriment in some department, or we've been working on healing in some department, we're now really more solid about us, about what we value, about what we want to take ownership of. Although whatever that is, it's got this burst of novelty. It's like we might have been headstrong about something, and it could have been our old way of doing something, or just the way that we're used to charging forward. Now with Mars and Taurus, we're a little bit more driven to kind of hold on to things that relate to our values and diving into our values. Mars is not typically its best fit in Taurus, so we can find that the more that we dig our heels in, we can get a little bit frustrated, in a sense with, things that are maybe moving too slow or things that are challenging what we think we need to hold on to, especially as there's a tension between Mars driving us into solidarity, the same time we have these energies of Mercury and Sun with a Gemini and Uranus. It's about something new and different. But there's something about breaking from this Chiron with our wounds, kind of starting to lick those wounds and heal things that's got us maybe enjoying there's a paradox here of enjoying getting a dive into something that's a little bit more stable and safe at the same time as like really being like, I got to do something new and different. So it's a new and different vibe coming from the Gemini energies. Mars is really bringing let's concentrate on some things that are familiar. At the same time as it's in there, it is still square Jupiter, which is like still spurring it to action. We can't just sit there and not make any moves, especially when it's squaring this planet of abundance and growth. But it's also squaring Pluto, and it's sextile Venus. Now, the sextile to Venus it gives us a little bit of favorability with other people. Again, we might still be playing with people that we feel like, hey, these others are safe and supportive. We might feel like the other people are in some way supporting us and helping us to heal from places we've been wounded by. But again, there is some amount of glamour where other people may not be exactly what we see them to be at this case, some fantasies, some ideations happening. And the beginning of Gemini season at this point is really the loudest thing. I mean, other than the Uranian conjunctions, is the square to Pluto. This is a very volatile angle where we're going to see the challenges between what we value and what we want to develop and what the bigger community might be kind of like pressuring us to do. The pressures of Pluto and the community factor through others in the group are challenging that which is comfortable. So I do see this Mars still being very frustrated and like digging its heels in to kind of hold on to something while there it is also ironically doing something new and like putting on a new costume and trying to walk and talk a different talk that's very deep and intellectual and all these things, but also feeling like agitated by these challenges of maybe where it is either being called to join with things that might not be in its best interest or to have to struggle against control factors that are coming from other people trying to tell it what to think or what is best at a time when we're really trying to hold on and develop what's good for us, not necessarily what the community says is the next best thing. So it is an extremely active beginning of Gemini season, a burst of novelty while we're still like really trying to hold on to something safe. We're really trying to be comfortable and like find something that we can develop while there's again all of these pressures from the collective, and some slippery, maybe deceptive in some way, influences and support that we feel from other people that may be that low key support could be some kind of low key manipulation. So it's quite a paradox of features at the beginning of Gemini. As it stretches into the next phase, um, it's really like an extension of that. I mean, that signature is so loud, it's gonna keep working. We noticed that Venus is square with Saturn now is more defined. So Venus has still got some of the idealizations and the glamour we talked about square Neptune, but as it squares Saturn, we're really starting to notice that everything that glittered wasn't gold. We're starting to notice that some of these connections that we were thinking were supportive might be things that need to end, or they might require more hard work than we thought. There's still this sextile happening between Venus and Mars that is fairly friendly and supportive, but there's like with Saturn and Venus, there's that idea that relationships take a lot of hard work. There's a lot of action that has to be taken with discipline, even though there's something about a drive for just that which is comfy and cozy is what's desired and pleasant. So it's like we want to be at home with other people, but we also know we have to do things on our own, and the challenges between others that are pleasant and our sense of obligations can cause us to either have to climb uphill battles when it comes to our relationships with others that require work and discipline, or endings in relationships where we say, you know, this isn't as supportive as I thought. This connection is not it's not conducive to what I'm trying to develop. So there, that square is kind of dispelling some of the glamour of Neptune. Neptune is wearing off as Saturn is wearing in. And the square, this is May 27th. I believe it was exact on May 26th. The square between Pluto and Mars is still super right. It's stronger at this point. So the power struggles. I mean, these two things, a Venus square Saturn and a Mars square Pluto, really speaks a language of um, kind of tough battles of willpower between control factors with other people in our life, trying to see where we're joining forces and where we're ending things. And it can be a little feisty and fighty in that regard. We also see that Mercury is speeding through Gemini. I mean, just in that week, it's gone from like something around 7 to 21. So there's like a rush. It's like zipping off. It's got, you know, it's been through its conjunction with the sun. After that, Mercury is the fastest planet and it's speeding right through Gemini. So there's a lot of learning, a lot of communication that's going on between just Mercury being in its home sign. So just the spark of novelty, the spark of differences, exploring all of that. We're definitely learning and communicating while these harder lessons are happening. I mean, Mercury is light and airy moving through this sign. Our sun is still shining in a sense of breaking through to new territory, enjoying a sense of depth when it comes to just looking at things from a deeper perspective via Pluto. the real story is at this point, at the end of May, between the challenges in our relationships about where we work harder or stop working together at all, and where our desires and pushes and actions are either running contrary to someone else or really stimulating an investment together. So it's like seeing what hard relationship investments we want to make and which ones we want to break. Seems like a theme around this time. After that point, we are still finishing that Mars square to Pluto, but it's starting to separate. So the volatility and the power struggle battles, we probably are finishing up those battles, so to speak, which is good news. Um, Venus is getting closer to Jupiter. So as much as we have had to cut ties with some relationships, or really buckle down, that Venus square Saturn energy, that's finishing up as Venus is getting closer to Jupiter, which is an opposite glow. It's like a yay, it's like a party, it's like a really great social opportunity. It could be like, really being really reservative and conservative with money, being more disciplined about who we relate to, cutting ties with things that we don't need, being real conservative. It's got a blessing on the other side. As we pass through that square, there's something that grows. We either have some great luck with relationships or money. There's something that we get to do after we've pinched the pennies and conserved, we get a big splurge of some sort. Once we've cut down or cut out some of the relationships that were, not forged with integrity, we're really getting a growth of something that really is feeding us in a worthwhile manner. So Venus conjoining Jupiter is one of the best glows of this season that we're seeing, and it comes after these kind of cutting ties and feisty fights have finished up. We also say that Mercury has gone into Cancer, and so our mind is getting more tuned into the emotional nuances that we want. So we've gone from like all this communication, hashing things out, moving everything around, to a mental focus on that which we want to keep for our comfort. And it makes our mind, by virtue of being square to Neptune, a bit more imaginative. The emotional factor and the fire factor to, in the square, can give us a little bit of daydreaminess about what we want to do. We're starting to feel a little bit more, again, the dream, the hope, all of those emotional qualities. We've done all this intellectualization to hash out where we're cutting ties. Now Mercury is getting a little bit dreamier, and it's going to start to then also play with Saturn, which is like building and forging something with its ideas. So there's some stimulation and some glamour with our mind that might not be the most rational, but we're finishing up those fights, those feisty aspects that's bringing in that mental kind of stimulation to get us more into the emotional realms of Cancer there in that way. Sun is also in a sextile with Saturn. That kind of sextile is a sense of our identity feeling a little bit more solid. So as we started off with that burst of novelty, now the Sun is like, well, what can I hold on to? Maybe I've broken the mold and I've chosen to take an exotic new direction or new turn about who I am. How am I going to hold on to this? What is it about what I've learned and what I'm expressing that's now I'm holding on to? So again, there's this feature in the Gemini season with novelty at the beginning, really disciplining and breaking ties with relationships and power structures that are overly challenging, or really figuring out how we want to work with those, that then is blooming into, by this beginning of June, a sense of new direction to hold on to. There's something we want to found. From what we have found and what we find, we want to found a new foundation that is growth oriented, comfortable, solid, all of these features that are kind of getting um, suggested coming into the picture by these new aspects that are starting up. By week four, Jupiter and Venus they're right at their conjunction. This is the party moment around June 10th, probably like a day before or two. Venus and Jupiter being together, quite a glow, quite a fun time, a large time. At the same time that it's beginning an opposition to Pluto, not quite there yet. We'll talk about that a little bit more when Venus moves forward. But at this point, it's really about the celebration. There's a celebration factor around this time, whether it's travel, something big with money, something good with other people. There's a glow that is happening in this regard. Um, it's starting to trine with Neptune also, that is bringing in a sense of the depth that whatever we've cut ties with and managed to sever and rebuild and eliminate, is now kind of culminating with a sense of depth and enrichment that is more in tune with the fantasy factors that we had rose-colored glasses about, but in a more satisfying manner at this point in the story. We can also see Mercury square to Saturn is making our mind much more serious about how we structure things. So the mental apparatus is kind of getting over the imaginative stage that's about the square with Neptune. It's getting more into the solidarity, the concentration about what we're really building and constructing with our articulation on the home front with the actions that we take. Um, Venus has got a square to Chiron right now. I guess that's worth noting in this mix that some of the growth and the satisfying factors, there could be some things that we're like really enjoying other people, but we might really have to notice like where that lines up with our own sense of identity. When, anytime that you join or start to nest or get into the emotional home front, square to Aries can kind of accentuate where being safe and cozy or at home might have things that are challenging to our sense of just independent identity. But I'd say that's a footnote more so in this story at this point, because Jupiter and Venus together, that is a loud, yes, fun, easy, good vibe. Um, so that square to Chiron, I don't see as being quite as significant in its painful aspects. I think that a lot of that painfulness was related more with the Venus square Saturn, the Mars square Pluto earlier in the season. In fact, at this point, it could be maybe even stimulating some healing regarding our identity because of the growth that we're doing with others related to what's pleasant and our pleasures, that's getting us closer to culminating a sense of our evolution and depth, also opposite the board with Pluto. Week five, mid-June. At this point, Venus has had its big party, something large time at home, large time with family, that good glow. Now Venus is in Leo, opposed to Pluto fully and trine to Neptune rather fully. And so this has got a feature like maybe after the party. It's like a depth of relating. Jupiter is not about the depth, but it is the yes, the opportunity, the generosities, etc. Venus opposite Pluto can be a look at relationships where maybe we are now getting deeper with people and seeing the culmination of the kind of investments that are really worth making. The other people that have got the features related to the types of groups and the types of mental like-mindedness that we want. At the same time, it could be from this glow of the big party with other people and the satisfaction that we also see what exactly in that big party is maybe pulling opposite of what our desires are. So there's always a feature with Venus and Pluto that can, like Saturn, a little bit indicate endings or tensions. But I feel like these tensions are really in the sense of uh, getting clear and clarifying our deeper hidden desires about what is pleasant, our pleasures, our desires, our relationships, our money game in a way that is completing and culminating something. All opposite angles are like full moons of aspects that are culminating things. And in this culmination, Venus is trine Neptune, which is at peace with the flow and the glamour and the mystical side of life. And it's getting into its trine with Saturn, which suggests being on solid ground with our relationships, having a sturdy sense of attunement to reality, so that anywhere that we are having to do some elimination, nowhere near as volatile as the Mars square, Pluto, Venus square, Saturn time period earlier in the cycle. This has got like a finishing up. There could be some finishing up of maybe getting out of some groups or organizations that are no longer serving us, or really investing and deciding where we do want to experience that kind of community. It's like we've cut ties with things. We've had a big party, a big growth of like forward planning and the yes factor from Jupiter. And now we're really comfortable and strengthened and emboldened to finish cutting ties and finish investments in the right places. So cutting ties and eliminations and deeper immersions and investments, those are all paradoxically related to a Venus Pluto type of relationship. We also see Mercury is now getting closer to Jupiter. It's also getting energized by a sextile to Mars, and Mars is beginning its sextile to Jupiter as well. So our mind and our forward thinking and our planning is on fleek, on fire. Um, our mind is planning for the future. The way that we're reaching out with our articulations and communications is very enhanced. It's like we've done all of the analysis and the hard work and the structuring of the square with Saturn that is starting to complete. And now our mind is really in a forward planning motion. So that's why, Venus's ability to finish cutting ties and begin forming those investments where it wants to concentrate more. It's got a yes factor of having fun. It's in Leo. We love the fun factor. We love the play. And Mercury is kind of building ways that keep that safe, keep that forward momentum going, with Mars giving it a lot of yes, yes, yes firepower too. Sun is finishing up in Gemini at this point. It's very close to the end of the journey. It means it's starting to square Neptune a little bit. So our sense of identity that was solidified in the sextile to Saturn, is now maybe starting to be a little bit more nebulous. I mean, there's tons of wibbly wobbly back and forth that go on, not just in the sign of Gemini, but as we go around the wheel. Everything's got cycles and seasons. The sun, as it starts to inkle closer to Cancer, is going to start to square this part of Neptune that gives us a little bit of more of a nebulous nature, a little bit more ambiguity. And again, the rose-colored glasses about who we are, how we express ourselves, how we see ourselves, what our identity is. And again, the identity of ourself, it's so unique to think that it's becoming a little bit less clear at this point, or a little bit more open to impression at a time where we just had a really great immersion with others and pleasure, so that we've been called more into cutting ties and forming alliances of a deeper nature at the same time that our identity is loosening in some way. So we're kind of starting to maybe open up a little bit wider to what could be and how we take action, which is going to influence what type of inner home we start to congeal in our next Cancer season, right? At the beginning of Cancer season, there could be a lot of dreamy idealism. However, before we get to that, we still need to end Gemini season. And at the end, the sun is starting to do that square to Neptune. You can see I picked a new time. I didn't pick a new time, but the time for the end of Gemini becomes 4:24 a.m. because that's where the sun is 29:59, the last moment of Gemini season for 2026. Sun is really getting into that square to Neptune, which is um I mean, Neptune brings a lack of clarity. There's some features that are clarifying, there's some features that are diffusing. This is a diffusive type of vibe that is that which is unclear, that which is dreamy, that which is idealistic. We are going to have a little bit of rose-colored glasses about just kind of drifting off into this emotional realm, feeling like we now know it all from going through Gemini. The sun is going to quickly start to focus on the home front of what we want to congeal and nest with. And our nest at this point in the season, as we start to get into that Cancer season, is starting with a lot of open impressionability. I could see that it's like after the season where we've cut ties with relationships that are not working or things that are hard, places where we feel like we're being challenged by values that are not ours. Venus then got a glow of, ooh, this feels good. These people are my home. This is a great home feeling when it was conjunct Jupiter. And that really can seduce it into investing in a new group, finishing and cutting ties with an old group, old mindset for a new mindset. And this is speaking a similar language of a sense of glamour. Now I'm going to forge a new home and new roots. It's got a little bit of dreamy idealism to it. Venus is still trying Neptune and starting to trine Saturn. So our relationships, we are getting more invested and solid in some new relationships that seem fun, that are sparking our sense of identity and taking action. It's not super clear, but it is where we're planning forward. And so it's almost like the carrot on the stick that baits us into adopting some new roots, adopting a new family stance, a new home, even though it's not exactly clear, it feels better than what we had before. It feels better than what we've cut ties with that seemed a little bit too challenging, too hard, too frustrating, etc. Mercury still is joining up with Jupiter, so the forward thinking, the planning, the travel, the home thinking, the thinking about home and planning about home, that's where the energy is going next. We've gone through this know-it-all communication station. Gemini season has really had us flip-flop, cutting ties with one way of thinking, one side, one dimension, and changing over to another. That's really what I see in Gemini season is like really like a strong push against one way and a strong adoption of a new way that is involved with our values, our desires, our relationships, that is now ending and has us forward thinking and moving into how we want to hold it all together for our new home front. Um, as we see Mars and this drive to really develop ourselves, and this it's the irony of like we've been digging into ourself with Mars over this season. We're now getting immersed into others again in a form of who our family is, who our new sense of roots and family is. And it's going to start to break us into some new radical action the closer that Mars starts to join up with Uranus as that next season kicks in, which we will talk about next time. So that wraps us up for our Gemini roundtable for this month. If there are any questions or comments for discussion, feel free to leave them in that section for the video. There was not anybody live today, so there's nothing I need to field in that respect right now. But I'm always happy to answer questions or respond to comments if people leave them on the YouTube. So if there's anything about Gemini or what we've talked about today that has piqued your interest or curiosity, feel free to inquire in good old Gemini fashion. So thank you to everybody that has checked this out. I hope it was entertaining and informative in some way. And I look forward to seeing you guys next month to get to know our sign of Cancer. Have a good one.